Smuggler's Tale is based in Hastings in East Sussex in the early part of the 19th century. The story is about two soldiers. One is called Daniel Simpson, the other one's called Ralph Masters. They serve in the British Army, or they have served in the British Army throughout all of the Napoleonic Wars. They've survived the campaigns in Spain. And in the first chapter, they finally fight in the Battle of Waterloo. Daniel survives the battle unscathed, but Ralph is seriously injured. At the end of the battle, their hope, their dream is to go back to their hometown of Hastings and resume their lives again as fishermen. But when they get back to England, what they find is rejection. Nobody wants to know about them, nobody wants to know about the war, and nobody wants to employ them or give them jobs. And so, like many veterans of that time, they end up begging and doing what they can to survive. While they're back in Hastings, they have a chance encounter with another veteran, and that veteran offers them some work in the only industry in Hastings that was still working, which was smuggling. So they become smugglers, and the story unfolds from there. I write my books a certain way, and what I do is, the first advice I'd give to any prospective writer is that when you have an idea, write it down straight away. Because if it's in your head, it can go anywhere. Once you've got it on paper, it stays there and you can do things with it. My schedule is quite a structured one, in that I'll write a start to the story, I'll have a finish, and I'll have a basic structure from the start to the finish. And the fun part for me when I add materials to the structure is that I can develop characters and I can develop the story. In fact, they almost develop on their own. But the most important thing I would say to anybody is the book won't write itself. Okay, you need to have that structure, you need to get it down, and you need to work on it. That's a very interesting question. I did spend many years in the police, and I met a number of different people from a variety of backgrounds. Some in good circumstances, some in appalling circumstances, basically. But what I had to do, whatever the encounter was, I had to listen to what they had to say. Often I had to write down what they had to say as well, because it was very, very important. So you had to be a good listener and a good note taker as well. But the important point from all those meetings was that each person had their own history, each person had their own story to tell as well. So for those reasons, the jump from being a police officer to a writer of historical fiction actually isn't that difficult. There's a lot of synergy between the two. I think it was the fact that I've lived in Hastings for over 20 years. I've lived in different places, but Hastings is the place where I've decided to lay my hat, basically, and I'll be there now forever. I just love the place. It's got, a variety of scenery, a variety of things to do, and a variety of history as well. And part of that history is smuggling. They've even got a smuggler's tourism adventure there. And I've visited how many times with my children, and I've just taken them around. They've had a great time. We've looked at the tunnels, we've looked at the mannequins there, and we've laughed and joked and stuff like that. But at the same token, there's a story there. Once real people were living there, once real people were doing things there, and I just thought, there's a real story here waiting to be written, basically, and why not write that story? And at the same time as well, it's my own tribute to the place I love, Hastings. Obviously, there are some writers out there who are very well read, and I've read them as well, enjoyed their books, the likes of Bernard Cornwell with his Sharp series. They're wonderful books, and they're a wonderful series of stories. And the latest series he's got out there now about the Saxons and the Vikings, the Last Kingdom and stuff like that. So yes, a very influential historical fiction writer. But for me, there's one writer that stands out. He's not with us anymore, but he was writing in the early 1970s, and his name was George Shipway. He wrote several novels based in England and France about 20 years after the Norman Conquest in 1066. One of them was called The Paladin, one of them was called The Wolf Time. Outstanding works of historical fiction, great historical detail, amazing research, but most importantly, the way he interprets historical characters and he brings them to life is a wonderful piece of writing. and I'd recommend anybody that if you can get hold of them and they're out there still, read them, because they're wonderful pieces of works by a great writer. What makes it special is that there are themes within the story that are still relevant to where we are today in the 21st century. The first theme would be about our young people joining the army and fighting wars for us on our behalf in other places. If we as a society are going to send our young people away to fight wars on our behalf, then when they come back, we have a duty to care for their mental well-being, their physical health, and their ability to reintegrate back into society again, because there's too many of them at the moment who are enduring hardships that they shouldn't really be having to go through. The second theme is about poverty. Here we are in 21st century Britain, and there are people who are still living in great hardship basically. If those people do not have the opportunity to decent education, the opportunity to apply for jobs, then it's quite obvious that they will turn to crime as a means to exist. Okay, it's a no-brainer. So that was relevant in the time of A Smuggler's Tale, and it's still relevant today as well. The third theme is about cruelty. I don't want to spoil the story for our readers, but one part of the novel talks about a prize-fighting bare-knuckle boxing match between two men that actually did take place historically. And within that, we see two men basically beating each other to a pulp. We have to ask ourselves questions then and today. Do we as a society want to look at people hurting each other for our entertainment? And finally as well, there's one about, which I think is uplifting, is about kindness. The story isn't all doom and gloom. There is light at the end of the story, and that light is about kindness and doing the right thing as well. The two main characters, Daniel and Ralph, as you say, are lifelong friends. They've suffered a lot together, they've experienced much together, and within the story they basically become each other's conscience, because they're doing fine doing what they're doing, but they have a strong sense of duty, both of them. And while one of them is trying to blank out in his mind that what he's doing is wrong, the other character is saying to him, you know this will end badly. He becomes his conscience, and throughout the book he keeps telling him, we need to get out of this, okay, you're living in denial and we need to stop doing this. And between the both characters as well, which I think is relevant for all of us, is that if you have a true friend, a true partner, they have to be true with you. And if you're doing something which you think is right, but they know is wrong, and they know what you're doing is wrong, a true friend should tell you that, and tell you that honestly as well. And that's a strong part of the story between the two of them, is that one of them refuses to shut his mind out to what's happening, and refuses to close his friend off to what's happening as well, and tells him very honestly, this is a bad thing we're doing here, and even though we're pushed into this situation, it's not our fault, we're still doing the wrong thing. As a writer, your book is your prized possession. And basically when you're finding a publisher, what you're doing is you're handing your prized possession over somebody else to take care of it for you. So you need to have confidence. You need to have confidence that your publisher is going to do the right thing for you. And at the same time, you want to be sure that your publisher is a professional, that you can trust them, and that they're going to give you the assistance and the support that you need as a writer. What I liked about Pegasus is that I have talked to an awful lot of publishers over the last 18 months. Some of them I initially got the thought of, I just don't want to work with you. Others that I could see straight away were what we call vanity publishing, where you could write down, I hate you on a piece of paper, and they'd print it as long as they get the money basically. But with Pegasus, there are several things that I liked. Pegasus are professional. They've got the right support mechanisms for you as a writer. But at the same time as well, they've got that friendly feel to them too. You can pick up the phone, you can speak to people at Pegasus. They do get back to you when you send them emails or telephone calls and stuff like that. So they're professional, but at the same time they're friendly and they're supportive as well.